The hand of the EU is evident in many aspects of the population crisis the UK is facing. In a recent survey, 80% responded that they think we must control UK borders, and 59% believe that EU membership prevents Britain from controlling the inflow of immigrants. Clearly, something has to be done now, but the UK government appears powerless to oppose the will of Brussels. And it is set to get worse. The right of entry into Britain has been granted to all EU states, including the newest EU members, such as Bulgaria, Romania and Latvia, to name but a few. Immigration from these Eastern European countries has been growing at an unprecedented rate.
Some people may have hoped that the new coalition government under David Cameron would get to grips with it, but we've seen recently that David Cameron has said that he's angry that Turkey isn't being allowed entry to the European Union. Now, if Turkey comes into the European Union, it means that another 72 million people will have an automatic right of entry to Britain. Even if only a small percentage of them decide to come, that's another enormous wave of immigration. How can this possibly be construed as in the interests of the British people?
Every year, millions of people arrive here in the UK, including businessmen, tourists and students. But how many of them actually leave? Well, nobody knows, because historically the UK government hasn't kept embarkation records.
We are the least controlled country of the English-speaking world, far, far less than the United States or Canada or Australia and New Zealand, for example, and much less even than some of the European countries, our neighbours in France, for example. But we need controls both inward and outward, as every other country does.
There is a clear and urgent need to improve the data and information about gross and net migration flows to and from the UK.
There is also, of course, a major problem with visas, particularly from African and some Asian countries. And that is this: somebody comes in, there's no formal check on their ability to maintain themselves in this country. So we have the situation in which people can come in on a visitor's visa of 6 months and then simply not go.
Student visas are also an area of widespread abuse. The number of visas handed out to overseas students in 2009 was 300,000, up 30% on the previous year. The fact that immigration accounts for the bulk of UK population growth has very profound and continued effects upon the demographic makeup of Britain. 1 in 9 of our population were born overseas. In London, that figure is 1 in 3. This trend, accelerated under the former Labour government, is increasingly turning Britain into a patchwork of disparate ethnic groups. The Labour Party's blatant experiment in diversity and integration appears to be an abject failure. The present government has no effective plans to address the issue.
Well, the pace of immigration into Britain is without doubt a major issue in this country, and the new coalition government have told us all it'll be addressed. They're going to control those that come into this country. There's going to be a rigorous points-based system, and all will be well, so we can stop worrying about it. I'm afraid that's just not the case, because we have no control whatsoever over those that come to this country from within the European Union, and that means we have an open door to nearly 500 million people. Worse than that, of course, is countries like Croatia, even countries like Turkey, are due to join the EU over the course of the next few years. So the truth is that we cannot have our own immigration and border policy and remain part of this European Union, so we have a choice.
And that choice needs to be made very soon. And it appears that leaving the European Union is the only way to regain control of the UK population.
One of the main reasons that we're told that we must have immigration is for economic benefit. But all the arguments to this are totally spurious, and we've now seen, it's been officially shown to be the case, that 98% of the jobs created from 1997 to 2009 went to migrants and not to native British workers. How can that possibly help our economy?
The argument that sustained net immigration is needed to fill vacancies and that immigrants do the jobs that locals cannot or will not do is fundamentally flawed. we found no systematic empirical evidence to suggest that net immigration creates significant dynamic benefits for the resident population in the UK.
Britain does not suffer from labour shortages. Indeed, for every vacancy, there are 5 unemployed. Amongst graduates, there are an average of 70 applicants for every vacancy. We are seeing that rising unemployment is the source of widespread anxiety and dissent across the country.
The impact is going to be jobs for the up-and-coming generation.
There's such as relatives of mine who can't get jobs due to immigrants coming in, taking all jobs, and there needs to be tougher laws set on it.
Around 1,000 angry demonstrators gathered opposite the Total oil terminal after a construction project was given to an Italian company. Unions say the firm has excluded Britons from the contract and has shipped in workers from abroad instead.
And this hasn't just happened, this has been going on for years. It has come to a head now, where you've got to do something about it, or you might as well just turn over. It's a country as well, the country's dying. Simple as that.
Although clearly benefiting employers, immigration that is in the best interest of individual employers is not always in the best interest of the economy as a whole.
This whole population issue is one of space, not race. Our current immigration policy means that we're trying to cram a never-ending number of people into a finite space. It is simply unsustainable. What we have to have is a commitment to end the age of mass immigration, and a commitment that any future immigration is on a strictly controlled and limited basis, and only where it can be shown to be in the interests of the British people. We need an immediate freeze on immigration for permanent settlement until we've put proper border controls in place. Then we need a strict points-based immigration system so that we can select and control who has the right to come and live here. We should of course allow people to come here to work, but on a strict work permit basis for a limited time span, and only where we cannot find a British worker to fill the post. Concerning the 1 million or so illegal immigrants that we have here, there must be no blanket amnesty for illegal immigrants. We must have a strict process for dealing with them, and overstaying a visa itself must be a criminal offence with penalties.
Radical measures could make a difference. However, there is one sting in the tail awaiting us all. Hidden away in the detail of the infamous EU Lisbon Treaty is the new common immigration and asylum policy, and it applies to migrants from both the EU and from outside. Ultimately, the EU will dictate UK immigration policy.
It is the stated aim of those in the European Union that we will have a common immigration and asylum policy within the next 2 years. And that means not only will we not have control over people from other EU states coming to Britain, we will lose control from those outside the European Union that can come, live, work and settle in this country. And if it goes through, it'll mean at the next general election there'll be no point even discussing immigration and border controls.
The UK can regain control of its borders and bring stability to the unprecedented growth in population we've seen in recent years. With the right policies, it is achievable. But as a matter of urgency, the first step must be for the UK to leave the European Union. Only then can Britain be free to implement its own policies to tackle this most important of issues.